So I can't really believe that I have to make this video, but here we go anyway. So I don't think that Sony and the fans of PlayStation need to worry too much about Xbox now owning Activision Blizzard. And everyone all over the internet is saying a bunch of shit about it that we should be worried, or Sony should be worried because they're going to lose the rights to these different games, and Xbox is going to skyrocket and dominate the competition. And I want to give out some facts that are true, as well as some opinions of my own about why I don't think that Sony has to worry too much. Part of it being that Phil Spencer himself already said that the Xbox has been in last place since the 360 days. And I know a lot of people, both personal and I've seen a lot of people on the internet, who for years and years would say Xbox is number one. They were in first place during the 360 and the Xbox One. And I know for a fact that 360 was a disaster of a console for Xbox, considering they had to rush the product to try to get it out first, and that led to all the red ring of death issues and all the other issues that the Xbox 360 had. And with the Xbox One, I don't really know too much about how that system was a failure, if you want to call it that. It wasn't a failure, but where they fucked up on, which the only exception would be the Kinect, and the original ideas for the Xbox One that they announced with the always online. You can't play used games more than like one use, or more than two uses. You can only share with your family. All that extra shit that they talked about back in the day, and how they had to turn around and change everything. That kind of adds to the idea that Xbox hasn't really been in first place for years, and they may not be in first place even in the near future, because Phil Spencer himself has said on that one podcast he did, I can't remember the name of the podcast, I'll post it in the screen, but he did say making great games is not going to bring people over to the Xbox from wherever they're playing on, which I think is kind of half true and half not true. Because I think depending on the game that you will have on your console could potentially bring gamers over to that console. I personally only got an Xbox One S at the time just because of Forza Horizon 3. As for my current Series X, I do play most of my third-party games on that, and I'm just waiting for the next Forza to come out. So with Xbox now having, I guess, the ownership, if you want to call it that, of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard, there's a lot to talk about with those deals. And I still don't think it's a worry for the other consoles in terms of Xbox going to now dominate the competition, because you still have to deal with the fact that these games from those studios and developers and all that are still possibly going to have the issues that they've had for years. There's still potentially a risk of that. I want to start with Bethesda really briefly here, because a lot of people are really focused on Starfield. They're focused on Starfield, and they may actually buy an Xbox or even a PC for Starfield. I don't think people should do that before the game releases, because we are at a time where pre-ordering games is a huge gamble, because you may get a game, you most likely will get a game that's not 100% finished, and they're going to finish it later. So you're paying $70-$80 for a game that won't be 100% ready for another year or two. And to add on to that with Starfield specifically, how many times has Bethesda let down the fans in the past, and how many times they have fucked up in the past? Okay, it's a lot of different things to talk about with Bethesda and how they fuck up in the past. You have Fallout 76. They technically have, I would say, a part in Redfall not doing good, because Bethesda is actually the publisher for the game within Arcane Studios. So you have Redfall, you have Fallout 76. Back when they did Fallout New Vegas, apparently Bethesda didn't want to pay Obsidian the royalties for the game because of the low score that it got, allegedly. I'm not saying it was 100% confirmed. I have no idea. It's just what I heard online, what I researched, what I found from Mojo Plays had a video on Bethesda and stuff they failed at. Some past things with DLC and the terrible launch of Elder Scrolls Online, again with the Fallout 76, and then the pre-order bonuses and the collector's edition with the stupid bag from Fallout 76, the $100 subscription for Fallout 76, et cetera, et cetera. Different games releasing with bugs and glitches. So it's really hard for me to say go and get a console for Starfield when all we know is what they're showing to us, and it could be also similar to a No Man's Sky situation. I was never sold on No Man's Sky by any means, and everyone around me was talking about how great it was going to be and how amazing it looked, which it looked terrible graphically. It's not a very graphical, impressive game. And I said, look, all that stuff is too good to be true. Don't believe it. And what happened? We all know what happened with No Man's Sky. And on top of that, according to what's this guy's name from Xbox, Matt Booty, which is a funny name either way, he said that Starfield would be one of Bethesda's games with the fewest amount of bugs from anything Bethesda has made. So we know games are going to release for bugs and stuff. Nothing seems to be free from bugs anymore. It seems like with these new consoles, we're getting games that are less and less impressive. Graphically and visually, they're not all looking that great. They're not performing well. A lot of games are releasing with crazy pop-ins and bugs and glitches. But Bethesda knows that they have a reputation for bugs and glitches, and they said Starfield will have the least amount out of any of their games, which I call bullshit on, because the scale of Starfield that they're talking about here tells me that there's going to be way more bugs and glitches. And if they do the same thing they did with Redfall by not having anyone properly test the game before release, which they're claiming that they are, but I don't think anyone should make any crazy decisions on a purchase until we know more about the game. Because even when one of the previous Bethesda games, I can't remember which one, it's from the Mojo video, they purposely had anyone who had an early copy sign a legal documentation to say, you cannot tell anyone that the game has a lot of issues, because we want everyone to play the game on day one to have the same experience. And that right there tells you that they're going to be hiding something with the different games, because if they're telling people, hey, you can play the game early and share your thoughts, but you can't say what's wrong with it. It's the same thing that happened with Cyberpunk. They gave the copy to all these players, and they said you can't share any of your gameplay or tell them anything that's bad with it. You can only share the gameplay that we provide for you. And I think that is a problem, and people are following Bethesda with Starfield in the same way people followed CD Projekt Red because Witcher 3 was so great, and they thought that was enough to make Cyberpunk the greatest thing ever, and it obviously wasn't. Now, going into the whole Activision Blizzard thing, when it comes to the games from Activision Blizzard, which everyone is talking about how certain games will now come to Xbox and be exclusive, like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. I can't speak on Crash Bandicoot making any more games as of what they recently made. I think they made a couple more recently, but Spyro is pretty much not coming back. Tony Hawk is pretty much not coming back at all. So your real main concern is Overwatch, Diablo, and Call of Duty, which I'll get into Call of Duty in a bit. But do I need to talk about Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4? Do I need to talk about what is going on with those games? Diablo 4, I think, is in a better situation than Overwatch, even though it has those expensive purchases and people complaining about the Season 1 and they had to restart the whole progress. I don't know if that's like a Diablo thing, like a theme in Diablo. You got to restart your progress from the new season. I don't play Diablo, and I don't think enough gamers play Diablo for it to actually make a difference by not having Sony players play Diablo. I just don't. And then you got to think about also Diablo Immortal and what happened with that and all the bullshit that they gave the fans. And Diablo 4 is having its issues, and I hear it's probably getting better, and some things are still good in the game and people like the game for some reason, but they still have their issues. Overwatch is basically dying right now. They're basically going to end Overwatch as an esport because of everything happening with Overwatch 2. Apparently they canceled the full single player thing they were going to do, and now they want you to pay for PvE things instead. So that's bullshit. And with Call of Duty being the main point, and I mentioned this in a comment on someone else's video during the whole FTC case, they were trying to say that it's much more than Call of Duty for Xbox, but they primarily talked about Call of Duty for the majority of that case, and a little bit of cloud gaming, which I'll get into cloud gaming maybe later. But the whole point, really, from what I saw, was they were trying to fight over Call of Duty, which, yes, Call of Duty is a massive game in terms of sales and how many people play the game, and they have this whole 10-year deal with Sony, and people say after the 10 years, it won't be on Sony no more. That's not necessarily the case. Unless they outright say after 10 years, that's it. That's not the case. After the 10 years are done, or even right before the 10 years are done, they can go to Sony and say, hey, your contract is about to end. Do you want to negotiate for another contract? Do you want to get another 10 or so years or whatever? And in terms of, playing Call of Duty within the next 10 years, in 10 years, I'll be in my 40s and I barely play Call of Duty now as is. I'm not saying that's the same for everybody, but 10 years is a long time. No one knows what will happen in the next 10 years. So I don't think it was dumb if they say, oh, you only got 10 years out of them, so you're stupid, Sony, and you fucked up by not doing the deal earlier, blah, blah, blah. 10 years is a long time, okay? And who knows what could happen within those 10 years. And I don't think it's going to make a huge hit on Sony because, again, who is really going to buy a new console just for Call of Duty? I feel like at that point, if you say I need to buy a console just so I can play Call of Duty, you're better off getting a PC so you can play Call of Duty as well as all the Xbox games, all the games on Steam, and you can play some of the PlayStation exclusives that are on PC, like Spider-Man, God of War, Uncharted, Returnal, etc., etc. So, I'm not a PC gamer. I've talked about that often on my channel. I have a Mac. I don't play PC games, but I would feel like if you want to buy something so you can play Call of Duty, you're better off with the PC than an Xbox. I don't think anyone is going to pay over $500 just to play Call of Duty, or even $350 for the Series S just to play Call of Duty. I don't think it's going to happen. And in terms of Sony and what they're going to do, they still have their exclusive games as well as the games that are from the other publishers and developers. They're still going to have games from EA, Rockstar, Ubisoft. I can't think of any other developers right now. Capcom. I'm looking at my collection here to see what else I have that's third party. I think that's pretty much it. Respawn from EA with the Star Wars games, and they're still gonna have their first party games. Anything they do with God of War going in the future. Apparently, the Horizon franchise is getting a few more games to release. We got a new Spider-Man game coming out this year. So Insomniac has Spider-Man. They also have Ratchet and Clank. They also have Wolverine coming out in the near future. They have Sucker Punch, who did Ghost of Tsushima, and they could do something else next after that. Whether it's another Ghost game or it's the infamous franchise. They still have the Gran Turismo games, which I personally prefer Forza over Gran Turismo. I won't get into that right now. But, Naughty Dog as well, whatever they decide to do, another Last of Us or whatever. So I don't think Sony has to worry too much because they still have enough games to keep them going, both first party and third party. And they're still going to get Call of Duty for the next 10 years, even though I guess most of those sales will go to Xbox anyway. It's just helping to fill Xbox pockets, but it doesn't mean they know what to do with the money in their pockets because they clearly don't really know what to do because Sony is rumored to make a new PlayStation Pro in the near future, which is supposed to support 8K gaming. I don't know why, but apparently Xbox is not planning any other hardware alterations in the near future. And I don't think these acquisitions are enough for Xbox to truly survive as a first place console, because I still think they're gonna have all those issues with Bethesda and Activision and Blizzard. Which, remember all the sexual harassment stuff from Activision Blizzard? You remember that? So you're really gonna keep supporting a company that does that, really? And then even Xbox's other first party games, Halo basically died with Halo Infinite. Honestly, don't even try to say anything against it or try to debate that. Halo Infinite basically died. I don't know what's happening with Gears of War. I only played the first one beginning to end with my friend in co-op. We were going to do the other ones, we just never had the time to do it. So I don't know what's happening with Gears of War. Yes, there's a new Forza coming out. I don't know what's going to happen with any other Xbox IPs. They got some new ones coming out soon. Soon and later. Fable has a new game. I never played Fable. I'm not really into it. I don't really care about it. Etc. Etc. There's a lot of stuff that is coming out for Xbox that's first party, and I respect that because it's like finally you guys are making something for your console and releasing things for your console. It's about time. But are those first party games going to compete with the Sony first party games and the Nintendo first party games? Because remember, Nintendo has Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and they have Metroid Prime Remastered, which is pretty good. And all the other Nintendo first party games, Smash Bros. People still play Smash Bros to this day. So you have to consider what Nintendo has, what PlayStation has, And will those first party games compete with the other two consoles, as well as will the Bethesda games and the Activision Blizzard games really compete with the other titles from the other developers? I don't think that we have anything to worry about with Diablo and Overwatch, and I think the main concern would be Call of Duty. Just what happens after the 10 years, because we're still gonna get it on PlayStation and Nintendo. And with the whole cloud gaming thing, cloud gaming is still in beta after all these years, and it's working much better now for the most part. I've tested it quite a bit with my iPad, and it is working for the most part, with the exception of a couple of games. But I don't think we're still in the time for that type of future where we can play cloud gaming anywhere. I think we're still in a limited technological era where we still have to play games on our local hardware flawlessly. I don't think cloud gaming is going to be ready for at least another 10 or so years, maybe. At that point, hey, play Call of Duty on the cloud if you want. But I think that Xbox is focusing on the wrong thing with the cloud gaming. They have mentioned before that that's where the main focus is, the cloud gaming. And I don't think that's where it should be. I think it should be on the games itself, because Nintendo Switch has cloud gaming options, and it's fucking terrible. Those games on cloud, they don't play for shit. They fucking suck. I have gigabyte speed internet, which is like the max I can get in my company. And I think that's the max you can get anywhere anyway, unless you're like a government and you have like higher than that. But I can't run any cloud game on Switch because it's terrible hardware. And on PlayStation, you are able to play games through the cloud. I've tried it with some of the PS3 games like Infamous 1 and God of War 1. And you can also do it with some of the PS5 games. I've actually played Miles Morales through the cloud briefly, and it was one of the most successful connection I've had with the cloud gaming on the PlayStation. Whereas on Xbox, at the time I tested that on PlayStation, which was maybe sometime last year, I believe, the Xbox cloud games were not working at all. It was a disaster. But now, today, it is working better. But again, it's still a ways away in my opinion. Even Stadia couldn't make cloud gaming work, and they completely shut down that service. So I think Xbox can try to fill their company with as many developers as they want. And I think in terms of that, they're not choosing the right developers. I think if they choose someone like EA, yes, EA does have its issues and has been pretty shitty. I think EA was back in the day when it was EA Games and EA Sports, back in the PS2 era. That was like the golden age of EA. But now, if they acquire EA, I'm not saying that it's happening, I'm saying as an example, they would essentially have exclusive rights to Madden, FIFA, Need for Speed, which, is going to make them even more money. And if you include like Respawn, they can get those Star Wars games by Respawn and Titanfall exclusive to Xbox as well. And that, in my opinion, would be a much better acquisition compared to Activision Blizzard and maybe Bethesda. I know Xbox was rumored to also try to acquire Sega. Honestly, who the fuck cares? I know there are Sonic fans still out there. Why are you still a Sonic fan? I only joke about Sonic because their games have been shitty for years and years and years. Now, don't get me wrong. As much as I'm not a big Sonic fan, I actually hate Sonic the Hedgehog and I hate the games. I love the two movies. Those two movies were great. Very successful video game movies, which is not an easy thing to do. So it's funny how Sonic can't make a good decent video game. Especially 3D Sonic games are very terrible and not good or decent, but they can make a good movie. So, and then I guess Yakuza. If you like the Yakuza series, I don't really care. So they can buy whoever they want. It could be they could try to get Square Enix. They could try to get Sega, which Square Enix is a different story because Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts and blah 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 blah. But to end this video here, I just want to say that I don't think really anyone has to worry on the other end, because these games that are within these developers in that umbrella, I don't think it's going to do much to help them skyrocket forward. And if you disagree, you can disagree and, have a conversation with me, but don't be an asshole about it and don't make a fucking, this video about me like they did in the past with the Bethesda video. So let's just have a normal conversation, a friendly debate if you disagree. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this whole video and the whole deal with Activision and Xbox. Let me know what games are you playing currently, because we don't have really major releases happening anytime soon, except for Mortal Kombat being in September. So we got a couple months before that. So what are you playing now? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.